Listen up. There's no more excuses.
We're empowering those who want the hustle by exposing the status quo.
The days of ordinary are over.
It's time to crush mediocrity and start discovering your greatest potential.
Welcome to the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle.
Welcome back to another episode of the Hustle Nation podcast. Today is a micro episode, and we're going to unpack the world of business and communication and how those two worlds collide. We're tackling a topic that can transform the way you communicate at work, and we're going to discuss 10 phrases that you should retire from your professional vocabulary starting now. All right, let's talk about what to stop saying. And number one, it's not my job. Well, it's not my job might seem like a clear way to define responsibilities, but it often leads to misunderstandings, missed opportunities, and it can easily offend people. It also creates a wall, which makes you look and feel a bit unapproachable. Now, we all know that in the workforce, we're going to be asked to do things that are not necessarily our job, that don't fall into our general work responsibilities. But there are other ways to go about it. Now, you could certainly say things like, I'm sorry, but right now I don't have capacity. Or, I'd love to, however, I would need assistance on doing that. But a lot of times we have to paint the picture, and we have to say, if we truly don't have the capacity, we have to say things like, currently this is what my schedule looks like. I don't think right now it would be realistic for me to take this on, or I don't think it's realistic to take this on without help. What do you think? Do you think that would be fair? So sometimes we have to respond with a question, and I always like that question with, does that sound fair? Because now we're getting someone else to agree whether or not it is fair to take on this added responsibility above and beyond what we are already doing. Number two, that's how we've always done it. Well, this sounds a bit old-fashioned, especially to the younger workforce. And while traditions have their place, clinging to the past can stunt progress. It can also make your company look unattractive to younger employees, right? I don't want to be doing things the way we did them 20 years ago. I want to do things better. I want to do them more efficiently. So let's discuss why that's not the best thing to say. Okay, so if you're wondering, how do we combat this phrase? Well, if the way you've always done things has been successful, you can say something like, we've had a lot of success doing it this way. Help me understand how this new concept is going to benefit us. Help me understand how this idea creates efficiency within the workplace. Because obviously, when we look at companies like Blockbuster and Kmart, companies that failed to evolve, we don't want to foster a culture that is stale and old school, right? We want to foster a culture of change and creativity. And so we want to try to remove that completely. And when someone does want to change, we need to ask, how does that work? Well, tell me more. You need to be open-minded to at least hearing someone out. And then once you have that information, using that information to make an educated decision. And if someone is interested, my question is always, would you be willing to lead that initiative? Because if it's something you don't necessarily want, that's a good way to get people to say, you know what, not right now, I'm kind of busy. Okay, well, if you'd love to look into that and create a plan as to how we make this change, feel free to invest some time, and I would love to hear more about how we're going to do that. Number three, I'm too busy. We've all heard this one, and we are all too busy. But sometimes we're too busy being busy and not being productive. Working 50 hours a week is a badge of honor, but are we really putting in the 50 hours, or are we just keeping ourselves busy? And so it's a phrase I think that can impact your relationship and your productivity, and not in a good way. When someone is too busy or they say that too often, they feel guarded. They seem unapproachable and almost as if they're never going to help you out with anything. And certainly that's not something you want to say, right? Because to be a good leader, to be a great teammate, we need to be available. And so talking about how your calendar is full in different ways is helpful. And if you're able to communicate more properly, you might be able to get help from other people on your team to get those things done. When you say too busy, it's typically because you've been asked to participate in something extracurricular. And so often when you say, I'm too busy to help, I'm too busy to plan, I'm too busy to go to that event, it does often come off as I'm not interested, I'm not available, I'm not engaged. And so if we get in a habit of saying that all too often, people will scratch their head and wonder if you are just busy or if you are really working. And so, different ways that you can approach this is letting people know realistically what your schedule looks like. If someone's trying to schedule a meeting with you, oftentimes I will say things like, to get something like that on my calendar, I'm about 2 to 3 weeks out right now. And it will make that person more likely to hold and keep that appointment with you, especially not showing up. If they know that your availability is scarce, they're going to take that appointment more seriously, potentially prepare more for that. And so I often use the phrase, my schedule is full. Things are a bit hectic right now. I've got extremely limited availability. So if you could send me an update, I'd greatly appreciate that. But I wouldn't have time right now to dive deep enough, or I don't have enough time to give you the attention or to give this the attention that it needs. And so you're helping them understand that yes, I do care about this and I would love to give it more attention, but at the moment my schedule does not allow. And a lot of times we do have to explain, I've got a lot of sales meetings, client meetings, is it internal stuff? Is there developments within the company that are exciting? It is helpful to let people know that I'm busy, but I'm not just too busy that I don't want to take this meeting, right? Number 4, this will only take a minute. How many times has something actually just taken a minute? That's often like saying, hey, do you want to go out for a beer? Well, so often it's not a beer, it's 3, right? And so let's be realistic. If it's a question, it's probably 5 minutes. I'd rather ask for 5 and take 3 instead of asking for 2 and taking 7, right? So let's be respectful of our time and the time of others and say, hey, I want to ask you a question. Hopefully, I'm just going to take about 5 minutes of your time, no more than 10. And then when that time comes, you say, look, I understand you said you had something in 10 minutes. We should wrap it up, but let's talk again at another time. This is one of those phrases that can be very misleading and it can disrupt schedules, right? And so it's important that we discuss this and be realistic about how to approach this. So often I take the 1 minute and I ask for, can I have a few moments of your time to ask a question? And if it ends up taking a little bit longer, we can always revisit this. Let's put some time on our calendars so that we can have a more intellectual conversation where I can give you my full attention. Number 5, we've tried that before. Now, so often we hear that it can be very stifling to creativity and innovation in a workplace, whether you're a small company or big company. It sounds dated. It feels dated. And so often when I've heard that, it's insert eye roll here because you've tried it. It doesn't mean you've made the best attempt at it. So often when I've used it in my vocabulary, I can tell you it was a half-ass effort. And so saying we've tried it doesn't necessarily mean you've given it the best effort. So I might replace that with, well, I would like to tell you about the time when we tried to implement X. Would you like to hear the story about the time that we struggled to implement this software? Or before we go any further, I think it'd be important for me to tell you our experience with X because it tells again that you care, that you're concerned, you're engaged, and that there is information to share. But as soon as those 4 words come out of your mouth, it sounds like you're going to go right to the negative. Number 6, it's not my problem. Now, this again comes with a very large negative connotation. The phrase just alone creates silos and hinders teamwork. It almost seems like, and it does look like, you don't care. It feels like you don't care. It feels like you're very selfish and focused on yourself. Now, if we're referring to someone on our team or within our company, this is a phrase we want to strip from our vocabulary immediately. Now, if you are a leader, everything is your problem. Everything is in your interest. And so we typically understand that we take responsibility for almost everything. And so there are a lot of ways to rephrase this, or a lot of ways to reimagine this. And let's talk about that. So when we say this phrase, it's often because we don't want to get involved. And we can certainly say that, but that alone is not the answer to the equation. That needs more context, which is, if this is a problem amongst 2 people, we need to start with, the 2 of you need to find common ground, or the 2 of you need to find a happy place in the medium. If it's time that's a problem, you need to communicate that properly to the individual and let them know that they may need to find someone else who has capacity right now to help them. If it's an issue amongst 2 other people, you need to start the conversation by suggesting that they need to start to attempt to resolve it amongst themselves. But saying things like, help me understand how I can help in this situation. Because oftentimes when someone is asked that question, they come to a solution or find a resolution on their own. A lot of people need to say it out loud to be able to start to fix the situation. But the biggest thing here is that we don't want to come off as if we do not care and we are not compassionate. Number 7, it's not a big deal. Well, unfortunately, it might be a big deal to someone, or it may seem like a big deal that's not. And so oftentimes we need to start by trying to understand the other person's concern or people's concern. And so by asking questions like, I understand your concern, and let's work together to communicate to address this. And again, I've said before, and I'll say it again, help me understand where you're having an issue, or help me understand where there might be a struggle. I would like to try to understand your perspective here, and letting them know if there is a fear here that, I want to talk through it, because I don't think it's as challenging as you might assume it is. And I'd like to be able to help you through this challenge or through this struggle. So we need to show compassion, we need to show care, and we need to ask questions to try to help them and help yourself understand what's going wrong. But more importantly, how can we help the other individual see the opportunity and the light at the end of the tunnel? Again, probably another cliche I need to cut out from my vocabulary. Okay, we've all done this. It's not my fault. Well, just because someone's coming to you with an issue or coming to you to report something, it doesn't mean they're assuming you did anything wrong. And it may feel like it may seem like it, but again, we would be making assumptions if that's the way we were thinking and that's the way we were approaching this. So my alternative to this would say, can you provide some more insight on the situation? Or let's assess what happened and find a solution together. What do you think about this situation? Where do you think we should go next? And so I think that there are a lot of possibilities, but saying it's not my fault, again, you're just defining the fact that you were not involved or it's not your problem. And so I say it's important to really think about the other person in the situation. How about that's impossible? Now, it may not seem necessarily like something you want to eliminate, but when we say things like that's impossible, we start to really stifle creativity and ideas, innovation. But don't we want to make things possible? Don't we want people to think big, think prosperously? So, my solution to this is let's brainstorm ways to make it possible. Why do you think it's not possible? Because to me, that is a negative mindset. That is not a growth mindset. And so I would ask someone, under what content could it be possible? What would we need to do to get to that level of success or to develop a product of that magnitude? So I think it's important to think about the possibility, not the impossibility. Okay, we've heard this one and we've all been guilty of it. There's nothing I can do about it. When you use this phrase, you're throwing up your hands and you're choosing to be a victim. Resilience, on the other hand, is finding what you can control and reframing a situation. For example, you could hearken back to a time, maybe just a couple of years ago or a few months ago, where we learned we were capable of reframing just about anything from how we work to where we work. So when you say there's nothing I can do about it, you insert a lack of control. And how does that look as a leader when there's a lack of control or lack of want to control something? So instead, focus on what you can do. What can we do about the situation? So often, that is the best response, is a question. And as another bonus, let's go here. You don't understand. Now, when I say it, I feel like I'm talking down to people. That's just me personally. But when you tell someone they don't understand or you don't understand, you limit access and openness to another perspective, to someone else. We've all heard our own unique past experiences, or you may think you know better. It's short, and this phrase serves no purpose. So instead, move forward and open up to potential that exists in this calendar year. To me, this phrase serves no purpose. I might start to ask somebody, and I've said this before, does this make sense? Or how do you feel about this? Now, if someone looks confused, you could call that out differently. You could say, based on the look on your face, you look a little perplexed. Is there something that maybe I didn't explain correctly? And what you're doing is essentially you're putting the blame on yourself. You say, I want to make sure that the way I communicated that was accurate and that it was clear, that it made sense. Do you feel good about that? And you're asking for feedback from them, which should make them feel included, should make them feel important. And you are asking to make sure we're on the same page. It's up to them to respond properly. So in summary, crystal clear communication is essential in business and leadership because it reduces misunderstanding. It fosters trust and empowers teams to make informed decisions. Jargon, cliches, and other catchphrases that our teenagers use just don't connect, even with the younger audiences. It's going to make you look like you're trying to fit in. And if you want your employees to value you and your perspective, you need to be authentic. You need to be talking relevantly. And sometimes that requires personalized guidance. Cliches, on the other hand, may not connect with younger employees, and they certainly won't help you connect with older employees. See, your team values authenticity and relevancy, and trying to fit in is not a good look under any perspective. Effective communication strategies should consider the diverse needs and preferences of your team members to maximize engagement and productivity. Remember, assumptions are never good under any context. So for us as leaders, let's zoom out. Let's make a list of things as you catch yourself saying these things, and let's try to replace them with something that's more thoughtful and effective. Look, we're all guilty of a few of them. Nobody is perfect, and certainly not 100% of the time. So let's use communication to foster creativity, innovation, and a more efficient workplace. To everybody listening, thanks for your time. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.